Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and a lot of you guys have asked me to make a video talking a bit about subtlety within dungeons and generally in PvE. As a lot of you guys have probably played a lot of Legion, chances are you dabbled a little bit into Mythic Plus environment where subtlety has been one of the stronger specializations for this, and chances are you probably want to continue playing subtlety within dungeons because it is just such a fun spec. The burst is insane, it feels so fast paced, it feels so cooldown reliant, but even though it's cooldown reliant, there's a lot more player control to the spec than something like Outlaw, which is auto attack focused, or Assassination, which is just poison proc focused. So in this video, I got into Heroic to showcase a little bit how subtlety plays in a dungeon environment and give you guys a little bit of an idea of what's it gonna end up playing like when you're gonna get to max level at 120 if you do decide to play subtlety as a PvE spec. Off the bat, what is subtlety good at? Subtlety is very gear dependent, so you are gonna have to be patient as the spec might not be the strongest off the bat as soon as you get into the game, but certain things like standardization for how weapons scale with our characters, I feel like those things are going to help a little bit to define and ready us for a lot of the PvE content if you are somebody who's going to play subtlety, but still you're going to be very gear dependent, so if your spec does not start doing damage at the beginning, don't worry, wait a little bit, might take a raid tier, might take 2 raid tiers, but eventually the spec is going to pick up speed. So it's going to be a little bit weird going from Legion where you are the dominant, the top dog within PvE environment, now you're just having to kind of wait a little. But if that does not stop you, don't get me wrong, I'm somebody who played all of Outlaw, all of Legion, whether it's good, whether it's bad, and if you're just somebody who has a passion for a spec, you just like it that much, you would rather just play your favorite spec no matter the situation, no matter the circumstance, I completely understand you, so this video is kind of for you. The spec itself is going to revolve around a very bursty build. This is the build right here. The build is a very good combo of massive amounts of burst with a little bit of energy regeneration to it that is much needed, with a lot of punchy damage with a cleave, AoE, single target, flexibility for it. In the first row we have Fine Weakness, which on Shadow Strikes and Cheap Shots will make us deal 40% more damage through enemies' armor. So you'll basically want to line up a Shadow Strike when you go on a kill target, whether it's a single target fight or let's say it's a group fight with one target that needs to be taken down. In the second row we're going to go for Shadow Focus in order to help smooth out our rotation, because if you don't go for this talent you really lose out on a lot of energy benefits. Our artifact weapon ended up doing a lot for us in terms of the energy department, so this one is almost like a given. At level 45, it's a choice between Mark for Death and Deeper Stratagem, essentially. Deeper Stratagem I feel like is a better option if you are going for more punchy, bursty AoE damage or single target damage, but Mark for Death ends up being better in pure single target. At level 60, I went for Soothe in Darkness. You will essentially want to go cheat death on any mechanics that would otherwise one-shot you, but Soothe in Darkness is a good alternative if you know you're not going to die to cheat death mechanics for a bit of self-heal. At level 75, it actually is a choice for you. You have Prey on the Weak, which makes it so that on stuns, you'll deal 10% more damage to enemies. Great in dungeons where certain enemies need to die faster than others, so you can kidney them and the whole group can focus them down. You can go Night Terrors to grab a 30% slow AoE with your Shuriken Storm, which is actually useful and is necessary in some boss fights even. Or Shot in the Dark, where your first cheap shot, if you say you need to CC a target from casting spells or doing anything, that can give you free energy back for that first cheap shot in the opener. At level 90, if you are going to go for a bursty build, Dark Shadow is going to be the way you want to go. The extra damage increase it gives you as the punch to the spec. And in the last row, you will want to go Secret Technique if you're going for single target, AoE, cleave situations of any kind. As Secret Technique is kind of a fun one. It's a replacement for DFA, but it functions very similar to DFA. It has a cleave component, but also has a punchy single target component to it, and it doesn't benefit like an Eviscerate. It doesn't count as an Eviscerate, so your Shuriken Storms into Eviscerates and Shuriken Storms into DFAs would buff the DFA. Here, Secret Technique is a whole nother finisher, but you do have a component where you get its cooldown back faster the more calm points are spent, so it should line up fairly easily with your Shadow Dances, which have exactly the same cooldown reliance or cooldown reduction effect to it. So that is the fun build, but there is a more sustained build that's better for pure single target that you can take into raids. You'll go still with Fine Weakness, Shadow Focus, into Mark for Death, into probably Cheat Death, into Prey on the Weak or whatever your options are, into Envelop in Shadows to give you more charges of Shadow Dance. So no longer will Shadow Dance buff your damage, but rather just give you more charges so you can Shadow Strike a lot more often. and then for single target purely you would go for Master of Shadows to give you back the energy. And you basically go back to Subtlety when it was still a Shadow Strike bot, somewhere around the Nighthold days. I know a lot of people didn't like that playstyle of Subtlety at all. A lot of people enjoy the Bursty Playstyle, but this is the Sustain E playstyle that is the best for single target. But you basically become a Shadow Strike bot. I'm not a huge fan of that build whatsoever. I'm not a huge fan of the type of damage it produces because I feel like it's more boring. It's very energy forgiving. It gives you a bunch of energy, so you should never really run out of abilities. It gives us a bunch of shadow strikes that you can sink into the enemy back to back to back. But I honestly myself find the Bursty build of Subtlety, I feel like that's where it really lives in, that's where it shines. And I personally wouldn't even want to play anything besides the Bursty build, because as you'll see in the video, it's just so much fun. So if you are going for the Bursty playstyle, how are you going to play? So first of all, you will want to make sure you get a Shadow Strike on the enemy that is going to want to take more damage. So in a pack of adds, if one of them has a cast that is detrimental to your team in a dungeon environment or even a raid environment, you will want to make sure to Shadow Strike the enemy in the opener. Build up the common points, get a full Nightblade, build up the common points, pop all your cooldowns with your Shadow Dance, with your Symbols of Death, and then go for Secret Technique. Letting Secret Technique just basically cleave everybody around you or really burst a singular target. And that's a lot of fun. That ability on its own, it's not as flashy as DFA. DFA would take like two globals, one to throw you up in air and the other to slam you down on the ground, and there's a lot of things that could happen in between. The ability could bug out and no damage could happen. Sometimes you would fall through the floor. Sometimes when you are on the upchuck, you may clip through a wall and maybe get DC'd because you're kind of out of bounds and the game is not sure exactly where you are, and now you're stuck behind a wall for the rest of the dungeon. So they removed all those components out from DFA by removing DFA from your class talents. It still is an honor talent, so if you want to run around in PvP, it still is a lot of fun to use, but for PvE, they felt that the Secret Technique was going to be the talent that kind of replaces it in the purpose as well as in the effect. So you still have a punchy single target damage to it, you just don't have any kind of stacking synergies with, let's say, Shuriken Storm, where you can, you Shuriken Storm a couple times to stack the damage of your next Eviscerate. Then you go for a DFA, which counts as a two-part finisher, the second part being the Eviscerate part, and then you do insane massive amounts of damage with that. So it's not quite as intuitive, it's not quite as combo based, but it's very simple to use, and I guess simple things will help the spec shine a little bit brighter if ever necessary. It's very bursty, very punchy, and very cool, and does great AoE damage. It kind of just has smart targeting to it, so as long as you're around the enemy where enemies are, it will just kind of cleave a bunch of them. I don't know if there's a cap to how many people it can hit. I don't know if there's a minimum. Things like that I just haven't really tried or haven't really got to science out a lot, because I'm kind of just waiting for the BFA beta to be over, for BFA to finally be released, so more people can have access to this stuff and more people can find out. Subtlety is not going to be the spec that I'll be maining, but I definitely find it a lot of fun. When it comes to AoE situations with a bunch of cleave adds, I feel like that's where Subtlety is beneficiary at. It's very involved when it comes to bursting down adds. It's not quite like Outlaw Rogue, turn on Blade Flurry, then Killing Spree, and then everything, a bunch of things just die. Or if you go as an Assassination Rogue, spin to win with Phantom Knives a couple times and then get a big old Crimson Tempest and watching everything melt. It's more involved. You have to actually go through your rotation. You actually have to combo your abilities together. You have to make sure you have that fine weakness in there, get the combos out, get the Secret Technique out, and then I guess it depends. You're gonna be as good at Subtlety as you are managing energy and managing cooldowns. If you're good at managing energy and managing cooldowns, chances are you'll do great amount of damage. If you're somebody who knows how to pace your cooldowns throughout the encounter, let's say you know which packs of adds you need to pop cooldowns in and which ones you can kind of just wait out. If you're good at generating and spending common points, you can get more charges of Shadow Dance. That means you have more opportunity for yourself to have a little bit extra oomph and upfront damage in the opener. There's little things that I guess keep you kind of on your toes and keep you entertained with the spec, and that's kind of fun. I mean, I'm somebody who's still gonna play combat, I love it, but playing a little bit of Subtlety here and there, trying it out for dungeons and just seeing just how involved it is, it's actually kind of cool. It's refreshing because the spec continues to have that involvement in it that it had in Legion. So I feel like it actually might end up being one of the more fun specs to play, but again, very heavy gear reliant. Overall, it feels fun, it feels great. Again, very cooldown reliant, but that's not anything new if you've been playing Subtlety for any form of PvE whatsoever. You probably understand that the spec is very cooldown reliant already as is. So in my opinion, the most fun build ends up being the Bursty build, the Symbols of Death with a Shadow Dance into a Secret Technique combo where you just really burst everybody down. But there is a sustained build where it's just a Shadow Strike spam. Now, I'm somebody who would rather play a build that's fun, even if it's competitive or not competitive. I'd rather personally play a build that's fun. I've never been somebody who will play, okay, you know, oh, hey, Assassination is the top spec. You know what? I'm just gonna take that as a personal challenge, trying to find if I can play Outlaw just as good as Assassination. Maybe if I get perfect gear, maybe if I get perfect trinkets. You know, there's always something I can do in order to improve. So that's kind of the mindset that I've always had. If you're somebody who will want to play a build that's the best for single target, at least Subtlety will have one build. But if you're somebody who's going to commit that high, that far, you might as well end up playing the spec that might be the top damage. So that's something for you to choose yourself. Do you want to be playing the best possible spec for the best possible situation at the time? Do you want to play the class or do you want to play the spec? I don't think there's a wrong answer. I don't think there's a right answer. I think it all just depends up to you. I'm somebody who would rather play a spec that I enjoy. I'd rather play a playstyle that I like, because if I like that playstyle, chances are I'm going to spend more time with it. I'm going to spend more time perfecting it. I'm going to spend more time getting better at it. I'm going to spend more time getting gear for it. Chances are that's what I'll end up doing with the spec and the playstyle that I enjoy. But for some people, they're just satisfied being able to play a spec that deals damage, no matter if it's Outlaw, Assassination, or Subtlety. So that is something for you to keep a look at. I guess it all depends on the kind of player that you are. Currently on the beta, but you should know a beta is a beta is a beta. Things are about to change any day now. On the beta, everybody's playing Outlaw. Every time you are getting into a Rogue dungeon and you see somebody who's like Mythic Plus geared, it's usually, if they're Rogue, they're usually an Outlaw. There's maybe one or two Assassination Rogues, and I seldom see any Subtlety unless they're doing some PvP. Although I don't think that should stop you from even trying. I feel like once more people get their hands on BFA beta, of course you'll have certain specs and certain classes that are baseline performing better than others in maybe specific fields. But I feel as more people get into the specs, somebody will find, you know, if there's a will, there's a way, and I think it's just a matter of time until people find a way that certain builds, certain specs can be just as functional and just as powerful and just as useful, just as viable as, let's say, what the popular specs right now are, like the Outlaw Rogue spec. I mean, it's going to be hard to try to beat the Blade Flurry damage and the good auto attack damage of Outlaw, but I feel like, honestly, if you just put your mind to it, anything can happen, anything can work. I feel like Subtlety has potential to be a strong Mythic Plus spec, mostly from its AoE cleave capability, as well as its focus on single target when it comes to adds and improving on single target, which I think you have a lot of opportunity in majority of the dungeons. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts on Subtlety. What do you think about it for PvE? If you're somebody who played Subtlety maybe for Mythic Pluses before, and if Subtlety is even looking like a decent spec for you, and if not, if you're not going to play Subtlety, which spec are you thinking you're going to be drawn to, at least at the very beginning of BFA, until Subtlety ends up getting a little bit of gear here and there. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see all of you guys in another video.